Bonjour tout le monde. Aujourd'hui, c'est vendredi le 13 septembre. Aujourd'hui dans l'histoire, so we have a this day in history with a discussion question. La chanson de la semaine with the numbers up to 20. A TPR, those are just two things I'd like you to make sure that you practice a little bit, continue with, because those things will continue to come up again and again. And then you have your weekly check-in today. Aujourd'hui dans l'histoire, aujourd'hui c'est vendredi le 13 septembre. En 1759, il y a une grande bataille à Québec. Okay, we know this is a date, a year, and when we say the years, we start with 1000, 1000, then 700, 700, then the rest of it. 59. En 1759, il y a, there is, une grande bataille à Québec. Bataille, it is a cognate, and you can maybe kind of tell by the picture here, battle. Une grande bataille, so a major one, a big one. Quebec. Quebec, also known as Quebec City in English, is the capital of the province of Quebec, and it is still to this day a French-speaking province, even though the rest of Canada is pretty much English-speaking, which actually, what we're talking about this period of history is has a lot to do with that. So I'll explain that at the end. La bataille était was sur les plaines d'Abraham, on les plaines d'Abraham, the plains of Abraham, which is just a big area, open area in Quebec City, pendant la guerre de 7 ans, during literally the war of, we know this word, 7 years. We know this war as the French and Indian War. In French, they usually refer to it as la guerre de 7 ans. La guerre était between les Anglais et les Français au Canada. So the war was between the English and the French in Canada. L'armée anglaise a gagné. The English army won. Okay, so when I am talking to you about this, or when I mentioned earlier, rather, that this war had to do with the reason that Canada is primarily English-speaking now, it is because of this, l'armée anglaise a gagné. So way back in the mid-18th century, this war happened, the French and Indian War, la guerre de 7 ans, was between, entre les Anglais et les Français, et l'armée anglaise a gagné. So it was the English army that won, meaning that England then took over what had formerly been French territory, and that is how Canada ended up being very primarily English-speaking, although there are still a lot of French speakers in Canada. In the province of Quebec, that I mentioned earlier, of which Quebec City is the capital, it is the official language, and they work very hard to preserve the language there. In some of the other eastern provinces, like Nova Scotia or Prince Edward Island, there is also a pretty major contingent of French speakers. And there are plenty of people who are bilingual throughout Canada. But there are actually people in Quebec, sorry, pronounced that weirdly, Quebec, who are only French speakers, who are not English speakers. So it is not a given that everybody who lives in Canada is an English speaker. And this is actually an example of how that linguistic divide happened. Not an example, really the example. This was the event that made that linguistic divide happen. Okay, une vidéo fantastique. This is a video that one of my colleagues, Madame Hales, she's the French teacher at Leeson at high school, found, and it's pretty funny and maybe a little bit cringy. I don't know. It's meant to be cringy, though. It's meant to be not taken very seriously. But it explains the La Guerre de Sept Ans, or the French and Indian War. It's all in English, and it's on a green screen, and it's a green screen from 11 or 12 years ago. So it's pretty bad, but it's still kind of funny and explains the French and Indian War a little bit. So if you want to watch that, you're more than welcome to. Okay. During what war did this battle take place? These you can answer in English. So during what war, La Guerre de Sept Ans, did this battle take place? I told you what La Guerre de Sept Ans meant earlier, literally the War of 7 Years. But I also told you earlier what we usually refer to it as in English. So either of those answers is fine. And who won the war? Which side? Okay, last thing you need to do today is your weekly check-in. So if you go to Schoology and you click on the weekly check-in button, I appreciate that some of you have been doing this regularly for the last few weeks. It helps me to get to know you, especially in an online class where I don't get another chance to get to know you really. So it's very helpful. Okay, et c'est tout. That is it pour aujourd'hui. Bon week-end. Au revoir tout le monde.